Today, I'm grateful for the opportunity to chat with the newest Keystone Pictures partner, Tim Archibald. Tim is such a talented DP, and he's also known for his wide-ranging abilities in the field. Let's just say that he can do it all. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Tim Archibald. Tim, thanks so much for joining us today. It's very exciting to have this time to actually chat with you about your experience and time in the business, because we've worked together a bunch of times, but we've never had an opportunity to just really sit down and talk. So I'm very excited about that. So let's jump right in, okay?
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Jody.
Let's talk about how you broke into the business.
My start goes back all the way to high school, believe it or not. I was fortunate enough when I was I guess we can go all the way back to middle school. My best friend in middle school, in about eighth grade, I met him, or seventh or eighth grade. Alan Bress was his name. And his father happened to be one of the full-time traveling CBS cameramen for golf, football, basically sports. Saul is his dad, Saul Bress. And Saul was a Emmy-winning cameraman for CBS. I mean, I'll never forget it. The first time I walked into Alan's house and up above the TV, there were 4 Emmys just sitting on the wall. And I think they were for award shows or Super Bowls. Nothing it wasn't like
Still
he individually
impressive.
won it. It was a group effort. Yeah, no. So to see an Emmy and to hold an Emmy at, in 7th and 8th grade, I'm like, that's pretty neat. What does it take to work in television? It seemed like an opportunity to go out with Saul to a golf tournament. It was a PGA Tour was playing in Denver, and he flew Alan and I out. We stayed at an NBC. I'm in 8th grade, just staying at an NBC suites. We go to the course where I'm up in the TV towers, kind of hanging out with the announcer because he worked. I think it was the 15th tower. So Vern Lundquist was in his tower. I got to meet Vern Lundquist. I was sitting there for the entire tournament, and it really kind of just gave me this. Well, this is people pay you to do this kind of stuff. Like, this is an industry. That's my first kind of foray into it. Made me really happy, and I just knew if I could find a way to make this be what I do for a living, I don't think I'll ever feel like I work a day in my life. And so,
and that
in essence,
started in 8th grade or in middle school.
Well, I got the
That's
bug
crazy.
then, and it was for the rest of the time I've always been into computers. I've always been into technology. All through 9th grade, 10th grade, same kind of things. I thought I wanted to be a computer programmer, and that was the way I was going to kind of get into tech and television potentially. And when it turned out that I took one class in computer programming, I was like, I just can't do this. And there was at my high school, which locally it's Pennsbury High School, fantastic program in the arts. And the one thing that they had was a television station, completely run by students. They had one administrator. His name was Al Wilson. Al was an amazing influence on so many kids' lives because Al ran the television station with these kids, and basically he made sure it stayed on the air, but all the content was shot by kids. It was all edited by kids.
Wow.
And we maintained a 24/7 station. Now, most of the time it was replays of sporting events, whether it be a basketball game or a volleyball game. But we had a television crew at every single one of those events. And multi-camera. So right off the bat in high school, I was learning how to switch a multi-camera event. I actually ended up being the announcer for both the football and the basketball team. And so that was kind of how I got bit. That was how I broke into the industry. It was I knew that I wanted to do this. And from there on out, I knew there was nothing else I wanted to do as far as a career was concerned. I had to find a way to make television work. So I left this at the Philadelphia area, went to school in North Carolina at Elon University. And from there, I think it was just kind of a little bit more. I learned how to linear edit in high school. I learned how to shoot in high school. All these things that I think a lot of people, you need to know in order to have that basis. 11th to 12th grade, that was how I kind of got started.
Did Elon have a good program for production?
At the time when I chose to go to Elon, it wasn't the most, renowned program for broadcast communications. They had a very small school at the time of communications. It really actually wasn't even a school of communications. It was a comm major. So when I got there, that was 1998 is when I got to Elon. And I saw an opportunity. I saw an opportunity to be a big fish in a small pond, make a big splash and I knew that program needed that kind of attention. It needed people to not just push the major forward at school, but also then have connections outside of school, branch out into the industry and see if you can't, tie those things into each other, go out and get the experiential learning whether it be at a sporting event for CBS as like an intern or a runner, low end of the totem pole kind of stuff where you're only getting paid $50 for the day, but just getting your name out there and getting that experience. Where that's kind of how it started, even at Elon for me.
They had internships at Elon?
We did. I did an internship when I was there. I actually interned at ABC News in New York. I interned at The View for 3 months up there, right at the Millennium. Actually, it was a great time. It was that show had really just launched. I think they were in their second year of existence. So it was Lisa Ling and Joy Behar, Meredith Vieira, and Star Jones, and then obviously Barbara Walters would appear occasionally on the show. So that was when I was working there. It was pretty neat. It was such a great experience, and that was kind of the beginning of newsy stuff. It's kind of like I did sports all through college. That was once at Elon, I was really close to UNC, to Duke, to Wake Forest, to all these huge basketball
big schools. Yeah.
And so CBS or NBC or ABC, somebody was down there every weekend doing something, whether it be the track and field championships that were televised on like NBC Sports. CBS obviously had all of the college basketball at that time.
Right.
So every weekend, in addition to going to school and being a comm major, I was always kind of calling whatever production company was coming in that weekend. Do you need any production runners? And I did the NCAA tournament a ton. I did some golf down there a bunch.
Wow.
And just kind of, and like I said, the NCAA track and field championships, anybody that was around, I was always volunteering for those kind of jobs to get my name out there.
You really were self-motivated. I mean, nobody told you should call these people to try to get a runner job. And quite honestly,
Correct.
I mean, I went to Penn State and we had, as good of a program as it was antiquated. After I graduated was when it became this enormous, state of the art. I was still typing on old typewriters from the 50s, I think. But they didn't really have a lot of assistance for finding internships or anything. So it's really amazing that you took it upon yourself to really get that experience. I think you got the bug early.
Yeah, well, that was the one thing I learned, even in high school. I learned, so we were when I say Al Wilson was instrumental in the way that we were taught and the way to kind of roll us into the industry. And really, I think that he did such a good job because he got us press passes to it normally wasn't the major teams, but we, like the Phantoms, for instance, played here at the Spectrum at the time. So we had Phantoms press passes.
Wow.
And the big thing we would do is we would go down, watch the game from the press box, then go down, interview the players after the game, take that package, run it home, quickly edit something in the morning. And we used to do a sports center every morning with actual footage that we shot the night before. So we ran a newsroom,
that's cool.
In high school and that kind of stuff. I just think you can't. And that was the thing, is that kind of got all of us, everybody that kind of ran with Mr. Wilson and ran PHS TV. When we got to college, we took it upon ourselves to also then kind of make sure wherever we were, most of us had stayed in the industry. The funny thing is, and I don't know how, the survivability of what people thought they were going to do in high school versus what they do now. I can say this with confidence. I know it's between 6 and 10 people that were in class with me and are now still working professionally in television.
Wow.
So we're talking from high school through till now, which is 20 some years. We're all still doing it and we all still love what we do.
That's amazing. So after Elon, and you were, obviously you were building a resume, which is an important thing to remind people that you can build your resume even as a kid. You don't have to be, in your first job working as your first thing, on your resume. Where did you go after Elon? What was your first job?
So I think what's fairly interesting is I ended up out of the industry after Elon. It was, and I think that a lot of people, you'll run this, especially people that deal in freelance in our industry. It's so tough sometimes to kind of stay busy. And sometimes if you don't stay busy and you don't stay in front of people's minds, then the next thing you know, you're not being called anymore. And the next thing you know, you're out of work. And so that actually happened. It was, I had about a 2.5-year stint where I was struggling. I was kind of lost. I was still doing some stuff on the weekends and nights with CBS. I would travel, and and do the occasional runner gig, whether it be, down to a Super Bowl or out to an AFC playoff game or something like that. But unfortunately, I ended up out of the industry full time for about 2 years at that point in time, until I ended up back with another small production company, and totally changed focus at that point in time. It was funny. I've been in the industry now for 98. So, I mean, that's 25, 26 years, right? And I've run the absolute full gamut of production, as far as everything I haven't worked in scripted and I haven't worked in film, but everything in between, as far as anything you could see on television, or Harry Homeowner that was recording his son's play, or, a funeral, whatever it might be. I literally have worked in every aspect of the industry, from large scale networks like CBS and ABC, where I worked in college and then a little bit there afterwards. Then I left and went to a very small production company that we had 4 people working for us. I was both the senior editor and the senior shooter. There was one person in management above me that kind of did the sales and marketing side of things. We had another shooter and another kind of intern, and that was it. That was the whole company.
But
that's where I kind of.
Tim, how did you keep yourself motivated, right? Because you're in this industry, this is what you want to do, but then you had that time period where you weren't actually actively working in production. You were still connected, but you obviously still had the bug. It never went away. How did you keep yourself positive about not giving up on your dreams?
I mean, it was tough. I mean, there were 3 or 4 times where I thought I had, when I didn't think I really had any hope. And then I think there were glimmers of hope. Like the things I'm mentioning are big events that I got called for that I never expected to be at. I was at the 2004 Super Bowl, I think 2004 or 5, whenever Janet Jackson had her debacle.
So you've seen Janet Jackson's wardrobe. Breast.
Well, what's funny is everybody saw it, but anybody that was at the game didn't see it, because you couldn't see it from the stadium. I was there. For that game, I was sitting at the 50-yard line, directly in front of the announce booth and next to the president of CBS and the owner at the time of Viacom. I mean, huge. I mean, Bill O'Reilly was immediately to my left. Dan Rather was to his left, and then it was Sumner Redstone and
my goodness,
Les Moonves were sitting right there. So when that happened, I mean, that was. But it's little things like that kind of kept me in it. It let me know the world's not over. You're going to get a job again in this at some point in time. You just have to wait for the right opportunity. And from there on out, it's always been kind of, when opportunity presents itself, sometimes it's been a rung down on the ladder and a pay decrease, or maybe it's been a sideways move, but no matter what, continue to move. I mean, I think that's been the big thing for me, is never get stuck doing something that you're not happy with, that isn't working for you. Because once you know how good it can feel to enjoy your job, to love what you do, and to not really feel like it's work, it's really hard when you're in a day-to-day grind that feels nothing like that anymore. And so those little glimmers of hope, I think, are what kept me going. It was, like I said, it was the Super Bowl. I think I was working the Masters still at that point in time. I worked the Masters from 1999 till 2005. Was the last time I worked the Masters. And that was the thing, is it may have only been an event or 2 a year that kind of I got to, but when I got to them that month that I was doing, I would go for the Masters. It was about 3.5 weeks, almost a month to go down there.
Right.
And the Super Bowl was the same thing. That was like a 3-week gig. So those gigs kind of kept me alive, kept the bug there, and let me know that at some point in time I'd be back.
But the technology skills that you gained, despite the fact that you weren't full-time in the TV industry, you were able to build your skills. And don't you use some of those same skills? Oh, yeah. You were able to take a piece of all of the jobs that you had and become who you are today, which is, you're an extraordinarily talented person. Talk to me a little bit about that, about just taking advantage of everything.
I think the point is to never stop learning. No matter what you're doing, never stop learning. Always pick up on new information and technologies, because you never know when you're going to need it. I look back over my whole career in both television and outside of it, and everything has led to a point where I am now. I literally just circled back with my wife the other day, and I said, this is crazy. Like, of the 3 jobs I did last week, each one goes back 10 years in my career. Like one of them was broadcast. Okay, perfect, fine. I've done broadcast shooting for the last 6-7 years now, and that's what it is. The one before that, and then another job last week was corporate video for Fortune 100 company. Same thing. I did that for the 10 years prior to the 6 years that I'm shooting professional video, and I'm mixing corporate in now all the time. And then like right now, I'm literally at an installation job that we're doing, where we're doing high-end audio and video installations at a country club, outside of Philadelphia. But we've done them at I'm trying to think, like hotels and conference centers and
The
country clubs.
courthouse.
Right. And in courthouses. So we're doing all these kind of unstructured wiring. This is what I was doing when I couldn't get in, when I was dealing with those 2 or 3 years not in the industry. I was doing structured wiring and custom home theater installs and kind of high-end networked audio installation back in 2000. I did that from 2003 to like 2006. And
But
it's just,
how important are
I
all
never
those
knew I'd be
skills?
coming back to this. No, I mean, it's crazy. I just
Exactly.
literally never thought that this would be something that I came back to. But, the industry is just, and now with streaming and it's full circle. It's right back around, and it's mind boggling to think of all the things that I learned that I can still draw on today. I mean, like, there's something to be said. I learned to linear edit. I learned to shoot on tape and film, and I know all those things, and those media, they're important, and they're still coming back these days to kind of show themselves again.
It is mind-boggling because, when you've been in an industry for any length of time and you look back at what you did to build onto your skill set, it's amazing how much you brought from the past into the present. This leads me to your Swiss Army knife comment. And I always talk about you and your partners. People will ask me about Keystone Pictures, and I always say I'm so spoiled because I would say, 95% of what I shoot, I'm always trying to make sure the Keystone is on my jobs. But there are times where, a client flies me somewhere and I'm working with a local person. They don't have the same skill sets that you guys do. And so as a Swiss Army knife, I use the term MacGyver. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything that you can't do. If there's a problem, the light breaks, you could rewire something. I mean, how valuable is that as a skill for someone who is breaking into the industry or just somebody who has been in the business for a while?
Well, I think that like there's the Swiss Army knife factor comes twofold. It's being willing to acknowledge the fact that everywhere you go, you're learning something, and so you're adding a tool to your device that you carry around every day. And the question is, are you going to like remember to use it? Are you going to remember you have that? Are you going to continue to kind of hone that, whether it be sharpening your skills or making sure that you understand something? And that's what I would say is like, I have never done a job where I wasn't willing to learn something new. I ended up, like every single time someone said, "Can you do this?" And I think the same answer you'd get from the other 3 partners that own this company. The answer is yes. First, I'll figure it out on the back end.
Right.
And I think we all feel the same way. Is it like, even if I can't personally do it, I'm going to find you somebody that, if I can't train myself or become proficient and know that I'm going to give you 100% of what you need as a client, then I'm going to go find somebody that can, and at least work with them so that way I can know and learn for the next time. And I think that's what it's always picking up from whatever you're doing and realizing that can be used, whether it's not for you now, but it might be down in the future, and always just fine tuning your Swiss Army knife. I don't ever want to be pigeonholed into one thing in the industry. I don't want to, well, he's a shooter. He doesn't know how to edit, or he doesn't know how to produce, or he doesn't know how to do graphics, or whatever it might be. I want to learn everything. I want to know it all.
That gives you an edge. It gives you an edge.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing where, like, when something goes wrong and, your audio guy, you look over and he's kind of freaked out. He doesn't know what's going on. Maybe it's a rental bag that he's never touched before. If you also have experience in audio and you know what to do and you can go save that day, that's what makes you a good DP. That's what makes you a good hire for whatever company it is. If they hire you because they know that you are a problem solver, not a problem creator, I think that's the biggest thing that you want to be in the industry, is like, solve the problems and you're going to go far.
So
legally.
Exactly.
I should say solve the problems legally.
When did you decide that you really that being a director of photography was your number one priority, or did you, or did it just sort of fall in your lap?
No, it was a little bit after that. So what ended up happening was basically I worked for that production company for it was about a year and a half, and it was a very valuable experience. I learned a lot, in essence, how not to run a business because the reason why I left, my paycheck started bouncing.
Oh,
And it was just one of those things where I was like, I told the guy, I was like, look, I'll take cash. I'll stay here as long as you keep the cash coming, but I'm not, going to take a check from you anymore.
right.
So I stayed with him for like another 6 months. At that time, and I was sucking everything in I could. I was like, literally like, okay, how does he run his business? How does he do this? How does he do that? Took all the information I learned. And then the next time I told him I would take a check and it bounced. I literally looked at him and I went, Travis, I'm sorry. I can do this better. I can run this place better. And I know that I can do this better on my own. So I left and I started my own company and I did exactly what he was doing. And I did exactly the same thing, but for new client, I generated my own client role. And so I started my own very small mom and pop production company. At that point in time, it was me and I had an intern. It was me and an intern. And I did everything. I shot, I edited, I sold. And it was, while that was a great experience and I learned so much, it was also a super tough time in the industry. I'm sure you're familiar. I mean, that was 2006 to 2010 and then 11. So, I
When
mean,
the
it
economy
was
was at its
exactly
worst.
right. Economy went in the dumpster and I had just started a business. I did the best that I could. I survived for as long as I could. But then came one of those moments in my life, which I look at and it's what I took a step back on the wrongs. I knew I did it because I owned a production company, but I wasn't where I wanted to be. My clients weren't who I wanted them to be. I really wasn't making anything that was like the creative passion that I had wasn't being realized anymore. I was stuck doing corporate work, government work. It was boring. It was, and then on top of it, just the business wasn't there. It was really starting to struggle. And I just didn't think I could make ends meet anymore. So I said to myself, I have to do something different. I jumped on Craigslist, and for those of us that are familiar with Craigslist back before it, is what I think it's a different beast than what it was back then. But they had job listings, and specifically they had TV, film, and radio jobs. I remember seeing it, and I was like, you
Wow,
know what?
I didn't know
I'm
that.
just, I'm just going to click on it and see what happens. And I was looking every day. I mean, I was running this company, trying to round out the last of my clients. I kind of went to my wife. I was like, I know I've got to change what I'm doing. I just don't know what to do. And I kept looking at these listings over and over and over again. Now in the process, you think I've got two small kids. I'm running a company. I really can't afford to take a huge pay cut.
Right.
But I ran across a job. It was an equipment manager for a production company in Maryland. Now I lived in Virginia, about 43 miles away from this office, which if you know Northern Virginia, 43 miles means that you'll be in the car for about 2 hours each way every day. So 4 to 4.5 hour commute a day to go to this job. But I looked at my wife and I said, I think I have to do this. I think I need to get my foot back in the door. I know that I can show them what they'll be getting quickly, and I think we can get back on our feet, but I got to do this. And so I did just that. I took a $35,000 job, that $35,000 a year job as a salary to get into their equipment room. Met up with them, worked there for 3 months. And the next thing I know, I got pulled into the line producers, it was actually the executive in charge of production's office for my 3-month review. And she took one look at me and she goes, I don't have to write a review. I know what I have in you. And I also know that I'm right now not paying you enough. So we'll go ahead and take care of that. And the next thing I know, they kind of gave me a huge bump. They gave me a lot more responsibility. They knew what they had gotten. They saw that Swiss Army knife. They saw a couple of the tools. They didn't quite know everything in the on that multi-tool.
Didn't know what you had in your toolbox yet.
They really didn't. So I will never forget. It was like 2010 or 2011. I started. Sirens Media was the name of the production company, and they came in my office one day and they said, "What do you want your name to be in the credits?" And I said, "What? I've never been credited. I literally have never had a credit before. It's 2010. I've been working in this industry for 15 years at this point in time. Not a single credit to my name."
School, right? On their high school news.
Sure. Unfortunately, PHS TV doesn't get listed on IMDb, so it's a little different.
Yeah.
But they said, what do you want your credit to be? And I thought to myself for a second, I'm like, all right. And I said, well, I'll go with Timothy Archibald. And I said, so wait, my name's going to be, yeah, yeah. So I remember watching it. I remember seeing my name come up for the first time in the credits, and it was just equipment manager, and it was fine, and it was what it was. But I knew at that point in time, I, I'm back. I'm back. I felt it. The energy was there. I felt good. I was happy. I hated the commute, but it was really worth it. And yeah, I think about a month later, something happened with a shoot that I had set up. So basically, my job there was all the equipment came in. I kind of checked it all out. I made sure
Right.
everything was good to go. I would put it all back together, I'd pack it up. I was talking to the DPs on a regular basis every day, calling the DPs and saying, "What do you need in this kit? What do you want?" Talking, negotiating, figuring out what I should send where and what kind of camera packages to go over. So I knew what we had. I mean, I knew everything we had. I knew what we could do. And they came to me at one point. I mean, it was like a DP had called out sick or something, and they needed someone to emergency shoot an interview. Oh, can you go at least set this up? I said, yeah. So I run over there. I go set up the interview. We shoot this thing. Producer ends up in my office in the afternoon. Did you like that all yourself? Did you do all you? How would you feel about doing a few more of those? We've got a bunch of pickup interviews, and there it was.
That
Pick
was
up
it.
interview, pick up interview, pick up interview every day. Instead of just running the gear shop, I'm then filming 2 and 3 interviews a day. Then it got to, well, we got all the interviews done. Oh, we landed a new series. We'd like you to shoot the pilot for it. Can you fly out for a couple
Wow.
days and go shoot this pilot? We think, you'd be good for it. I became their internal shooter at Sirens, so I kept costs down. They didn't have to hire that, $800-950
Right.
a day guy anymore. I used their gear. I used everything internally, and I made their development reels really cost effective. Next thing I know, I'm doing an entire series, and that's how it happened. End up rolling in something like that.
You were working on a lot of crime shows, right?
I was
What was it
Sirens Media.
like? Yeah. I
It
mean,
was
did you
weird. I mean,
sleep at night?
pretty well. I mean, I there were definite moments where like I mean, I used to handle all the gear and everything, and we shot. So Sirens Media was I would go with like 80% crime, 20% whether it be reality or other kind of genre. They had one big huge reality show. We did Real Housewives of New Jersey. That was a big one. And then in addition to that, they did probably 70% of what was on ID at the time. So yeah, it was weird. I mean, the really weird thing would be like hard drives would come back from field shoots and I would have to clear them. But in order to clear them, you got to kind of plug them in, make sure, check over what's on them first. I can't tell you how many times I kind of went into a hard drive and it was like crime scene, like actual crime scene photos. I think the worst one I saw the actual like Menendez brothers
Mm. The
crime scene
parents?
photos. Yeah.
Oh,
Um, because that was one of the cases we had done, and
yeah.
that was like, I mean, those are the things I wish I could unsee. But
Yeah,
by the same token, crime TV was also it was a blessing. It's a very interesting genre to work in.
it
It got
is.
me my start in recreations. I now I do dramatic recreations and I've done historic and I've done all these other things, but it all started with crime. That was kind of where I got bit there. It was you know trying to
Let's
figure
talk
out how we
about
gotta
the recreations because we worked on a
sure.
project with the historical recreation for Fox Nation was about Ulysses S. Grant. But you've done a lot of that. That takes a special talent, the lighting, the finesse, just the mood. How do you approach those projects differently than you would, a sports job or,
Sure.
another kind of production job where, we've gone to a medical office and interviewed doctors or what have you?
I think that there's a couple different things you have to do differently when you're on recreation shoots versus interviews and corporate kind of stuff. The first thing is you have to know that you're probably not going to have everything that you want or everything that would make your job easy. So what you've got to do is get creative. And I think sometimes it's in the creativity of planning a shot or a lighting scheme that you oftentimes can find something unique and different and a cool way to look at something. And that kind of lends itself to recreations as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to, like I'm doing a corporate shoot. I know I want these lights, this, that, and the other. If you
Right.
get all that and kind of throw it in a room, I can make that look pretty. In a recreation, You could be walking into, I mean, you know it. We've walked into one room and we've got to make it look like six rooms. Well, how are we going to do that? Shooting to every corner, kind of stylize things, shallows up the field. It's always such an adventure. And I think that's my favorite part about recreations is never knowing realistically what's going to be thrown your way, but being ready for anything. And that's another thing I think that's great about Keystone and on the four of us is that we're always ready for anything. It doesn't matter what you throw at us, we're going to figure it out.
I mean, you guys have been put in so many different situations, whether you were like hiding in a closet or in tiny little spaces or, on top of a mountain. You definitely go above and beyond. What I've noticed just with Keystone, you were a perfect fit for those guys. You were like that puzzle piece. You filled that final piece in their puzzle because you all bring a different sensibility to the work that you do. You all have different personalities and you complement one another, which is fantastic, whether you're on set together or just in your morning meetings. Tell me about what has been sort of your best gig and your worst gig. I mean, listen, I know that you've been shooting these Porsche shoots.
I know.
You're a huge Porsche enthusiast. So how bad could that be, right?
No, I mean, I do have to say that right now my current client roster is not too bad for my when it comes to like whether or not I like my shoots. I mean, I absolutely love everything I'm doing with almost. I mean, I would go with 99% of my clients are awesome right now. But my best shoot in history, I don't know whether to go with the low light first and the highlight second, or the highlight first and the low light second. But we'll go worst shoot first.
Okay.
Worst shoot was a show for A&E called Cursed. It was filmed in a soybean field in Kentucky in the middle of the summer, and we were there. I knew it was bad. Like when we got there, the soybeans were like this tall, so it wasn't too bad. You're traipsing through just a little bit of soybean field. By the end of the summer, they're like waist height, and about a month into the shoot, the production company went out and spent a good amount of money. It was per person, about $100 for everybody on the shoot. And they bought us snake boots. Now, when I say snake boots, you assume, are they for snakes? And you'd be correct.
Yes.
Bought us these snake boots is because when you're traipsing around in that soybean field, there are snakes there were spiders that ended up being about this big in there. And then there were snakes that would be eating all of the things. And we were in there all day. And so.
Wait, and they never told you before you started the shoot that you might be like walking and working in fields where there would be snakes?
No.
Because they probably figured nobody would do the shoot, right?
No, yeah, no, it was pretty bad. It was,
couldn't they get honestly, in the boot?
No, well, the boot was so that way if they went to go strike you, that the boots were actually hard, kind of plastic around your ankles all the way up to your calf, so that would keep them from biting you. So, but that show also gave me kidney stones at the end of it. So it was. I ended up in the hospital. I mean, that was a terrible shoot. Very, very. I would not.
Sorry to bring that up. So let's go on to your best shoot.
I'm very glad that show's not in production anymore, and it never will be. Best shoot is simple, and it's another one of these. It's a great example when someone asks you, "Can you do something?" Say yes. Sometimes it doesn't matter. This is one of those scenarios. I got asked by Stella Artois to go to the Cannes Film Festival and film. I actually wasn't asked to film. I was asked to run audio for a bunch of interviews. They needed an A2, an A1, and they wanted to know if I would come along. And I said, sure. But then the next thing I know, obviously I got over there and they found out that I could shoot and I could fly a drone, and I was doing a lot more work than just audio. But I mean, I was in Cannes Film Festival for 2 weeks, all expenses paid on a beer company's dime. And they're not kidding. When they tell you that there's more money in Cannes in that week than you'll ever see in your life, they are not kidding. It is.
Wow.
It was awesome. I don't know if I'll ever, and then, I worked the Masters for 6 years and I'm a huge golfer. So, I mean, there have been I've had some awesome shoots, but it's hard to get up there, with those.
Well, you've been at Super Bowls, US Opens, the Masters, the Final Four, Cannes Film Festival. I mean,
Yeah.
you've
Yeah,
done
you know the
so
one.
much.
You know the one I'm missing that I really want to be at, but I want to be there for personal reasons and has nothing to do with the industry. But I want to be at a Stanley Cup very badly.
Yes. Well, if you go, you better take me as your production assistant.
I'm
So
in.
let's end let's talk a little bit about your personal, your hobbies and things. You said you're a golfer, which I know you're an avid golfer. Your son is a hockey player. You go to his games, but you're a huge Flyers fan, which
Oh yeah.
so am I. That's kind of how we first bonded.
Yep.
Um, and I know you have like a whole room filled with everything gritty, right?
I
Why
do.
are you so enamored by gritty? And why didn't you go into the hockey industry? Why aren't you working hockey every day?
Well, first of all, if anyone wants to offer me a job in hockey, maybe I'll think about it. No, I mean, when it comes down to it, there wasn't, that it's an even smaller kind of arena to break into. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the one thing is like sporting television is, I think, even another one of those where if you're going to be on that level, it's just hard. A lot of that is who you know and how long you've known them for. But on the other side of things, as far as being a fan goes, I mean, the reason
It's
why I
been a
love
rough
Gritty.
year.
It has been a rough year, but I mean, I've been a season ticket holder for 4 years now, um, and 2 of those years have been weird with kind of COVID and everything. But the one bright shining moment for I think all Flyers fans, I remember when they introduced Gritty. I think all of us do. I think all of us thought the first day, "What the hell are they thinking? This thing is weird. It doesn't make any sense. It's just outlandish." And then it was an instantaneous. There's one tweet that Gritty put out that if you're a Flyers fan and you're as passionate as I am, you hate the Penguins. It doesn't matter who is,
Who's on
support.
the
It doesn't matter
team?
who. I don't care if they could trade half the
Sidney
Flyers to the Penguins.
Crosby.
I'm still going to hate the Penguins. And he, the Penguins mascot tweeted something about how Gritty was an embarrassment or something like that. And Gritty tweeted back at the Penguins, "Sleep with one eye open tonight, bird." And that was it. That
I
was it.
didn't
I was
see
sold.
that.
Yep. He said, "Sleep with one eye open tonight, bird." And I was like, if you're going to threaten violence against the Penguins mascot, I'm in. I'm in 100%. And I think that was when the entire tide of Philadelphia sentiment about Gritty shifted, I think, in that moment where, he kind of started to become enamored because he was like that weird. Then people started talking about he just looked like he was on drugs, so he could be
Oh,
from the
he's
Northeast. I
such a
mean,
troublemaker too at
yeah,
games. He
and
dumps
that's the point.
popcorn on people. He
They
really gets
knew,
in your face.
and I think they knew their target audience. They knew what they were going for, and I actually think whoever's in charge of their social media is incredibly brilliant because I think that what they're doing with how he does it and how he has kind of brought fans into the game. I mean, look, they are
People from
horrible.
around
They
the
are.
world know who Gritty is.
So I own every bobblehead. I mean, I should be very clear when we talk about my Gritty obsession. I have a 3 foot tall statue, which they only have sold a couple of them. I have socks, pillows, blankets, every bobblehead they've ever made,
A
and
chia
then
pet.
I do have the chia pet that didn't grow very well.
I didn't even start mine. Probably won't
But
work
yeah, I
now.
mean, I can't get enough Gritty, and I will forever be a Gritty fan. Always.
Maybe it resonates with you because you're gritty, right?
I mean,
You're
it could be. I mean,
tough.
look, there were plenty of people that told me I wasn't going to make it, and I was maybe it was a bad idea or whatever it might be, and I've kind of stuck around and hung around and been just fine. So I like them.
On that note, I just want to have you just say something as a parting. If you were going to give someone advice
Oh,
who
I
is
can give the
trying to
same.
break into
Yeah,
this industry, let's
yeah.
talk about being gritty and flexible and
I'll tell you what. Mine is a
reinventing
direct.
yourself.
Yeah, mine's a direct story, and it's a simple. I can relate it all kind of together because I tell this story. I've had many interns ask me, "Well, what's your single piece of advice?" My piece of advice is it's not just it's be willing to go the extra mile and be willing to go that extra mile and show people that you are dedicated to the craft, not just the money. Um, and I think that if you're willing to show that to people, that they're going to make a big difference in your life and in how it works. My story is simple. I was in college. I was working an NCAA tournament. I was in the truck. I was the low man on the totem pole. I think I was getting paid $150 for the day. I am the runner, the production runner. So you're in the
Right.
truck. I need popcorn. I need a
Anything.
soda. I need anything. You go get it. The director of the show, his name is Steve Milton. Now, Steve is the A director for all of CBS Sports. So he does the Masters, he does the Final Four, he does the Super Bowl, he
Wow.
does all of the big events. Steve is in charge of them. And he does the top echelon football game every year or every week. Steve came to me and he said, look, I don't care how you do it. We were in North Carolina, so the rules are weird for selling alcohol on certain days of the week and after midnight.
Right.
He goes, I don't care how you do it. I want you to get 2 cases of Heineken in this truck and make sure they're here for when we get off the air. We get off the air at like 1 o'clock in the morning. If you do that, I'll get you any job you want in the industry. And so I did. I made some calls. I actually, when I was in college, worked at a convenience store. I called the manager. I was like, Ed, I need you to put 2 cases of Heineken out back. Just take them out of my paycheck. Don't ask me what they're for. I need them. And I got the beer there. And we got off the air, and Steve walked right to me. He goes, what do you want? And I looked at him and I said, I hear you direct the Masters, right? A week later, I got a call from the production manager, and the first words out of Bob Tiley's mouth were, I don't know what you did, but apparently I got to hire you.
Oh, wow.
I worked the Masters for 6 more years after that.
Wow.
And honestly, that is, like we were talking about, that's what kept me happy. That's that fleeting moment. If it hadn't been for that willingness to kind of go the extra mile and to get that little in, that then I got the Masters every year, that then I got the Super Bowl, that then I got all these things that kept me going in the downtime. That's my best piece of advice. Be willing to go that extra mile.
It's that never say no attitude too. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Tim. I so appreciate you being here, but I know you're busy and you're in the middle of a job actually. So I do appreciate you breaking away. I look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks, Jody. Sounds great.
Subscribe to our podcast to hear more.